Lewis, we have to continue now with the program that many people may not like, okay? You know that I don't do things on this show for optics. I do things for what I believe is the truth. I think you know that, right, Lewis? You've been around on the show.
I'm aware of this.
You know that I support the broader goals of Black Lives Matter, wanting real racial justice in the U.S., wanting to look at disproportionate and unfair prosecution and incarceration of Black Americans. But you also know that I will call things out when they aren't quite right. This includes me calling out protest tactics that were counterproductive to the Black Lives Matter cause. This includes looking more deeply at broad statements like Black people are more likely to be shot by police and seeing what the data really tell us. I've been slammed for this. I've been called a white supremacist for this, but I'm not going to, as a result of that, do 100% gushing commentary about any particular group when there are critiques to make. Now, I'm going to get slammed today too, and I'm ready for it. Black Lives Matter put out a letter, a platform, effectively, and it includes support of the Israeli BDS movement. This is a platform which, in addition to calling for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions of Israel, it called Israel an apartheid state. It says that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians, and it said that the fight of Black Lives Matter for Black American equality in the U.S. is the same as the fight for Palestinian rights. I've told you before that Black Lives Matter was hinting at drawing parallels between their battle and what they see as the situation in Israel. And I've told you it makes no sense empirically, nor from an optics point of view, to be perfectly honest. They have jumped full speed ahead. Now, I know that when you hear support BDS, end colonialism, end the genocide, stop the apartheid, it sounds like a lot. Wow, that's a really overpowering case. What if we break it down into its component parts? Well, you quickly see that it makes absolutely no sense. Let's start with apartheid, right? Black Lives Matter's platform, for whatever reason they've decided, it points out that Israel is an apartheid state. Now, of course, apartheid, we know, Lewis, is a policy of segregating and both economically and politically oppressing groups of people based on race or ethnicity. Typically, historically, it is done against the non-white population. South Africa is a common example of this. This is factually untrue when it comes to its existence in Israel. Israeli citizens have the same rights regardless of their ethnicity, religion, or race, period. Now, people will hear me and they'll say, David, what about what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank? The people there have different rules, so it is apartheid. There is no doubt that Palestinian movement between Gaza and the West Bank and what I guess we would call sovereign Israel is heavily regulated. But those territories are governed by the elected Palestinian Authority and Hamas leaders. There is no comparison to a state of apartheid like the one in South Africa that is typically referred to. It is a total lack of credibility to say, oh, Israel's an apartheid state. You know very little if that's what you think.
Yes, you just don't know what apartheid means. Israel has had Palestinian elected officials. So please tell me how that's apartheid, please.
Next, genocide. Oh, there's genocide against the Palestinians. The new Black Lives Matter platform claims there's genocide against the Palestinians. This is also ridiculous. Any reasonable assessment would deduce that there is no such thing as genocide against Palestinians by Israel. Genocide, of course, the deliberate killing of a large group of people, especially those of a particular ethnic group or nation. Actual genocides are like what the Nazis did to the Jews, what the Turks did to the Armenians, what the Hutus did to the Tutsis in Rwanda. There have been horrible and tragic deaths in Gaza and the West Bank that have resulted from an unfortunate security state, which I have been very critical of and have suggested ways to loosen. The war in Gaza has resulted in deaths. It is not genocide. We can find individual terrible acts by individuals in Israel, like in most countries where you have militaries involved in conflict, but it is not genocide. The Palestinian populations in the West Bank and Gaza have exploded during the supposed genocide, consistently and significantly, dating back to 1948. In most genocides, the population of the afflicted group is negatively impacted by that genocide. It doesn't increase explosively. During the Holocaust, 78% of Jews in Europe were killed. The Khmer Rouge killed 25% of its own people. In Iraq, 90% of Kurdish villages were once destroyed, on and on and on. A couple of years ago, the Palestinian population was over 4 million. Data tells us the Palestinian population is growing faster than that of sovereign Israel or the non-Gaza and West Bank areas of Israel, call it what you will. By the year 2035, according to the UN, the Palestinian population is expected to increase by 60% compared to 40% in Israel. That is not a genocide, Lewis.
No, just more people who don't know what genocide really means. And if they are passionate about genocide, sure, they can't do anything about things that happened 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. But in Sudan, there's still basically a genocide happening. And this is where the native black people are being slaughtered. Everyone's Muslim here by those who have come in and taken power and the government in Khartoum. And shouldn't those who are speaking about genocide and apartheid when it comes to Israel and the BLM movement, shouldn't they be upset about that? I don't get it.
I will talk about that in a second. Last thought on the genocide thing. Some people will hear me say this. Well, the population has exploded. And they will say, well, David, Israel wants to commit genocide, but they've tried, but they haven't killed as many people as they wanted to kill. Those are the same people who talk about the overwhelming and disproportionate firepower and weaponry that Israel has. You're saying with all of that weaponry, they have been unable to kill more Palestinians, and that has accidentally led to this population explosion. Come on. Lastly, BDS, as Lewis is talking about. BDS is, Black Lives Matter says that BDS is a movement which shares their goals of an end to the war against black people. Number one, most black people in Israel are not in Gaza or the West Bank, but in Israel proper. If you ask them, would you rather be here or in Gaza or the West Bank? Figure out what they say. You will be very interested at the results of what they will tell you. And number two, to Lewis's point, I've talked about BDS. People say, David, why is BDS inherently anti-Semitic? Well, it's not. BDS is not inherently anti-Semitic. I've said it many times, but it has become a safe haven for many anti-Semites. And if BDS said, hey, we are a movement that seeks to use boycott and divestment to call for change in countries whose policies we don't like or are oppressive to groups of people or whatever, and we're going to apply that tactic everywhere that we see these problems, that would be one thing. But no, that's not how BDS works.
It's just Israel.
BDS has said, we want change in Israel to the extent they believe is warranted, and we could debate that. What technique can we come up with to try to hurt Israel specifically? And that is what Lewis is getting to. And when we talk about the principles of humanitarianism and human rights, one of those principles is the worst first. And there is no basis under which one could argue, if we are just to look at the world and say, let's apply BDS tactics to the worst first, that you would have a group that is solely focused on Israel. Absolutely undeniable. There is no question about this. I think this is terrible for optics. People forget that actually many African American activists and thinkers were on the side of what is colloquially called, used to be called Zionism, which now is like a bad word. It used to mean just a place where Jews can be safe and not get kicked out of, right? Edward Wilmot Blyden, founder of the 19th century American Pan-African movement, said, I have the deepest possible interest in the current history of the Jews, especially in the marvelous movement called Zionism. W.E.B. Du Bois, founder of the NAACP, said in 1919, the African movement must mean to us what the Zionist movement means to the Jews. Marcus Garvey, the founder of the Back to Africa movement, said in 1920, when a Jew says we shall have Palestine, and of course that term is being used because at the time, the British Mandate of Palestine, we're not talking about the same Palestine as Gaza and West Bank today. When a Jew says we shall have Palestine, the same feeling comes to us as when we say we shall have Africa. And even Malcolm X declared the year before he was assassinated that Pan-Africanism will do for the people of African descent all over the world the same that Zionism has done for the Jews all over the world. Now, to be clear, I'm not using the sort of caricature definition of Zionism of settlements and right-wing governments like Benjamin Netanyahu. I am unequivocally opposed to those. I am saying Zionism in the form from the 1920s that is being used here, there should be something like Israel that exists. So to pretend that there is this natural connection between Black Lives Matter and anti-Israeli movements like BDS that have cropped up is absolutely ridiculous. Now, if this is a battle that Black Lives Matter wants to pick, have at it. It will be hugely destructive and a distraction to their movement, which, again, the original principles of you can find no bigger supporter of than me.
But it's also going to be harmful in other ways. It's not just going to harm the movement. They probably see this as some type of outreach thing. We're going to bring in people from BDS. People from BDS are going to accept and adopt the BLM movement. But for those who don't really have a firm understanding of what's happening over there, all of a sudden now people in BLM, like in BDS, start throwing around words like apartheid and genocide. And
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden you have a very devoted, very anti-Israeli new recruit.
It escalates the fact-free insanity. And, I know people will be mad because according to some, I shouldn't even be commenting about this because I don't have the right characteristics, because I look white and, whatever else, whatever rules exist for me not being able to comment on this or at least be credible. Tell me specifically on the facts where you disagree, rather than just, I don't have a right to speak on this issue because of my perceived identity. That's what I'm interested in. This is bad for the BLM movement, whose broader goals I agree with and want to see succeed.